Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. It was the perfect Montana Saturday, steaks sizzling, kids laughing, music in the air, until the HOA stormed my backyard like they owned it. They came with fake laws, cameras, and a clipboard. What they didn't expect? I was ready to fight back. And I don't lose ground. The smell of hickory smoke drifted lazily through the backyard as I flipped steaks on the grill. My wife, Jenna, was setting out bowls of her famous potato salad, and the kids were running circles around the inflatable pool like it was a water park. I'd spent all morning stringing up those little patio lights along the fence and tuning the Bluetooth speakers so the classic rock station came in crisp. It was one of those rare Montana Saturdays that felt like a damn postcard. Clear blue skies, a light breeze, and no reason to look over your shoulder. We had about 14 people over, my brother Dean and his wife, our next-door neighbors Phil and Tracy, a couple of guys from the fencing business, and their families. Everyone brought something. It wasn't a party. It was just folks hanging out with ribs, cold beer, and laughter. The music wasn't blasting, and we weren't disturbing anyone. My 6-acre lot on the edge of Bozeman was private and well off the main road, surrounded by a tree line and a perimeter fence I'd installed myself. This wasn't suburbia. It was mine. I was at the grill with Dean, talking about whether I should finally fix that cracked tile in the workshop, when I saw a group of people coming down the gravel drive. 4 of them. They weren't friends, and they sure as hell weren't invited. My stomach tightened when I spotted the tan vests with the Golden Trail Meadows HOA logo stitched on the back like they were some sort of official task force. Leading the charge, predictably, was Karen Holden. Mid-50s, stiff posture that patented HOA smug on her face like she'd just caught someone jaywalking on her imaginary sidewalk. They didn't stop at the gate. They didn't knock. They just let themselves onto my property like it was open season. Karen held a clipboard and a thick envelope in her hand. One of the men behind her was carrying what looked like a tablet, and another, a bald guy with aviators, was already raising a phone and filming the yard. My guests froze. Jenna stopped mid-laugh, eyes narrowing. "Can I help you?" I said, loud enough for the entire yard to hear. Karen didn't even blink. "You're hosting a social event without prior approval from the HOA," she said, like she was reading off a warrant. "You are in violation of Clause 14B. Community gatherings exceeding 10 persons require 72 hours notice and board consent." I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" She tapped her clipboard. "As such, you are being issued a formal citation in the amount of $1,000, effective immediately." I let the spatula fall onto the grill with a clank. "Karen, I don't know if you finally lost what was left of your mind, but this property is not part of your HOA. You've been told that, in writing, multiple times." Karen smiled like a snake. "We've updated our community map to include adjacent parcels for future development. You are within the visual perimeter of Golden Trail Meadows and therefore fall under shared view impact standards." I laughed. "Too hard, probably. You're out of your damn jurisdiction. This is private land, zoned agricultural residential, 6 acres. I have no legal or contractual obligation to your fake fiefdom bylaws. And you are trespassing." Behind her, the guy with the tablet was walking toward the pool where the kids were playing. He raised it like he was documenting a crime scene. I stepped forward quick and firm. "Hey, get that thing out of here." "Do not film my children." He didn't stop. In fact, when I moved to block him, he brushed right past and gave me a firm shove with his shoulder. "You're interfering with official HOA inspection protocol," he muttered. That was the switch. I didn't shout. I didn't make a scene. I turned around and walked to the house. Calm. Controlled. My blood was boiling, but my steps were steady. I unlocked the front door, stepped inside, and walked to the gun safe in the entry closet. I unlocked it, pulled out the Remington 870 pump-action shotgun, checked the chamber, and walked back out with it held low across my chest. Not raised, not aimed, just present. The yard went dead quiet. Karen's eyes widened, and she staggered back a step. "You're threatening me with a weapon." I stopped at the base of the porch. "I am standing on my land with my legally owned firearm. You, on the other hand, just physically assaulted me and entered private property without consent. You are not law enforcement. You are not inspectors. You are 4 civilians trespassing during a private family gathering." I kept my voice level, firm, and loud enough that every single guest and every single camera heard it. "I've already called the sheriff. If you're still here when they arrive, They can explain the concept of property lines and criminal trespass in very simple terms. Karen's face turned purple. You just ended your future, Mr. Slade. I'll see you in court. You'll be lucky if you still have a license to grill by the time I'm done with you. She turned on her heel and marched back toward the gate, dragging her crew with her. The guy with the tablet shouted something about documenting aggressive conduct, but none of them dared to look back once they saw the shotgun still in my hands. I stood there, not moving, until their SUV finally turned around at the end of the drive and disappeared. Then I exhaled, flicked the safety on, and lowered the weapon. Behind me, the yard erupted in mutters and nervous laughter. Jenna came to my side and took my free hand. Her grip was tight. "Tell me the cameras caught everything," she whispered. I nodded once. "Every second." I didn't have to wait long. 20 minutes after I hung up with the non-emergency line, a Gallatin County Sheriff's cruiser rolled up the drive, dust curling behind the tires. I recognized the deputy. Ortega, mid-30s, sharp-eyed, had helped out last year when someone tried to siphon gas from my workshop generator. He stepped out, hand resting near his holster, not because of danger, just habit. "Afternoon, Mr. Slade," he said, glancing at the guests now milling awkwardly by the fence. "Got a call about a disturbance?" "Yeah," I said, waving him toward the porch. "Let's talk." I brought him up to speed. Everything. The uninvited arrival of Karen and her goons, the fake citation, the shove from the bald moron with the tablet, the illegal filming, and the Remington I had to bring out to get them off my land. Ortega didn't interrupt, just nodded and occasionally scribbled into his notepad. "Got footage?" he asked when I finished. "Oh, I've got better than footage," I said, leading him into the house. I pulled up the feed from the Nest Cam mounted on the roofline. Full view of the front yard, porch, and pool area. I showed him the group walking in without permission. Karen barking that ridiculous 14B citation, the man shoving me. Me walking calmly into the house and returning with the shotgun. Held low, not pointed. Ortega leaned closer to the screen. That's clear as day. "There's a second camera by the workshop," I added. It caught them walking around back. Bald guy tried to take a photo of the grill like it was a meth lab. Ortega asked for copies. I downloaded everything to a thumb drive and handed it over. "Did you point the weapon at them?" he asked. Standard procedure. "Nope." Held it low. Safety on. Never even raised it. I made a verbal warning. Said I'd already called you. They left without incident. "Good," he said. "That's important." We went back outside, and Ortega spoke briefly with a few guests who'd witnessed the whole thing. Dean gave a solid statement. No drama, just facts. Even the neighbors chimed in. One woman, a nurse named Melissa, who lived across the road, said she saw the HOA group walk right past the private property, no trespassing sign posted at the gate. Ortega made a few calls, then told me he was forwarding everything to the county prosecutor's office. Trespassing, unlawful surveillance, and maybe assault, depending on what the DA thinks of that shove. And the HOAs claim that I'm under their authority? He raised an eyebrow. This property's outside their zoning, no annexation on file, and even if they're planning to include you in the future, that doesn't mean squat unless you agree to join, which you clearly haven't. I exhaled, finally starting to feel my shoulders unclench. Ortega looked around at the still lingering guests, now easing back into conversation and beer cups. "Y'all need anything else?" "No," I said, "just peace. And some ribs if you're hungry." He cracked a smile. "I might come back for those off-duty." He left with the footage and statements, promising a follow-up once the prosecutor weighed in. I thanked him and went back to the grill, though the coals were dying by now. Dean helped me restart them while Jenna passed out fresh drinks and tried to lighten the mood, but I wasn't done yet. I headed inside and printed out every certified letter I'd ever sent to the HOA, the ones saying, clearly and legally, that I had declined their invitations to join. I found the letter from their lawyer last spring, trying to argue that viewable adjacency gave them visual compliance rights, whatever the hell that meant. My own lawyer had laughed that one out of the room. I stacked the papers neatly, along with a fresh USB drive loaded with the security footage, and labeled the folder, HOA Incident, Barbecue Invasion. The next morning, I sent it certified mail to both the county attorney's office and to the HOA's legal counsel. That afternoon, Jenna walked out to get the mail and came back with a yellow envelope addressed to me. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Notice of disciplinary hearing. You are hereby summoned to appear before the Golden Trail Meadows HOA Administrative Panel on Tuesday at 6 p.m. to address your failure to comply with Section 14B and your aggressive response toward community officers. I read it 3 times and laughed out loud. Jenna didn't laugh. She looked furious. They really think they can summon you like it's Hogwarts? I think they're trying to manufacture a paper trail, I said. One they'll use to justify more legal nonsense. So what are you going to do? I smiled. Ignore it. I'll let the sheriff and the DA answer for me. That night, I upgraded my perimeter lighting and repositioned every camera on the property, just in case. These people weren't finished, and something told me Karen was about to get creative. It was Thursday morning when the envelope showed up. I knew it wasn't junk mail the second I saw the return address, Gallatin County District Court. Jenna stood over my shoulder as I slid it open with a utility knife and pulled out the thick packet inside. It wasn't a joke or a bluff. It was real. Karen Holden, in her full HOA president glory, had officially filed a civil lawsuit against me. Plaintiff: Golden Trail Meadows Homeowners Association. Defendant: Trevor Slade. Allegations included reckless endangerment, emotional trauma, hostile conduct with a deadly weapon, and my personal favorite, malicious disruption of neighborhood. Cohesion. I'm not even sure what that last one meant, but it sounded like something she pulled out of a yoga flyer. I skimmed through the pages while my coffee went cold. Then I saw it. An annexed zoning map with thick red borders in a proposed expansion zone that included my land. The map was doctored. Not subtle, not even clever, just a blatant attempt to paint my lot as part of the HOA's future kingdom. And attached to that, a memo allegedly signed by a county development coordinator approving the expansion. Except I recognized the name. The guy retired 3 years ago. They hadn't even bothered checking that. I called Mary Nelson, my attorney, within 5 minutes. She picked up on the second ring, and by the time I was done explaining, she sounded like someone had just keyed her truck. They filed with forged documents? She asked. Looks that way. I'm going to bury them in paper cuts, she said. I'll file a countersuit by end of day. And she did. Mary's filing hit back with precision. Trespassing on private land, attempted fraudulent fine collection, harassment, civil assault via unauthorized physical contact, libel stemming from Karen's public comments claiming I brandished a weapon at children, which we could easily prove false. She even included a section labeled HOA overreach and abuse of authority, where she detailed how Golden Trail Meadows had no jurisdiction, no standing, and absolutely no right to police anyone not under contract. Meanwhile, word was spreading. Jenna overheard someone talking about us at the grocery store. Local Facebook groups were buzzing with speculation. I got an email from a former HOA resident who said she left the community years ago because of Karen's dictator routine. People were starting to notice and take sides. And just when I thought Karen couldn't double down any harder, I got a second envelope, this one from a firm I didn't recognize. Inside was a formal demand to appear before the HOA's Ethics Committee for violating regional cooperation norms. Apparently refusing to join their HOA now counted as unethical. Jesus, Dean muttered as I showed him the papers. Next week she's going to indict you for not recycling. Mary, of course, sent them a formal cease and desist letter, but she added something extra, a motion to subpoena all HOA financial records for the past year. I asked her why, and she grinned like a lioness. Because HOA funds are being used to fuel this lawsuit, which means every dues-paying homeowner is indirectly paying Karen to sue someone she has no legal hold over. Let's see how her neighbors feel about that. Sure enough, 3 days later, a man knocked on my door. Mid-40s polo shirt, HOA tag on his lapel, but no clipboard, no folder. Mr. Slade, he said, sheepish. I'm Derek Geller. I'm on the HOA board, was anyway. I just wanted to say, I didn't vote for this lawsuit. In fact, I objected, loudly. Then why'd it go through? I asked. He hesitated. Karen pushed it through during a special session. There were only 3 members present. No full quorum. The others didn't even know until it was already filed. Sounds like a great system, I said flatly. He nodded. I'm resigning. Just wanted you to know. And I hope you win. He left quietly. That same night, 2 other board members sent in public resignations, citing unethical leadership and legal risk to the association. Karen didn't respond publicly. But the HOA Facebook page shut down the next day without explanation. We were scheduled to appear in court in 3 weeks. In the meantime, Miri filed an emergency motion requesting that the judge dismiss the original lawsuit and sanction Karen's attorney for knowingly submitting forged maps and retired signature affidavits. And then came the call from the sheriff's office. Mr. Slade, we've reviewed the HOA's documents as part of your complaint. I thought you'd want to know. Go on, I said. We've opened a criminal investigation. Potential charges, document falsification, filing fraudulent paperwork with the court, and abuse of civil process. I hung up and stared at the wall for a long moment. Karen wanted a war. She just declared one on paper. I should have known Karen wouldn't wait for court. About 4 days after the sheriff's office told me a criminal investigation had been opened, things on my property started to go sideways. First, it was subtle. The mailbox got knocked loose one night. Looked like someone drove a truck just close enough to clip it, but not enough for tire tracks. I replaced the post. 48 hours later, it was smashed completely flat. Jenna found it on her way back from dropping the kids off at school, bent at a 90-degree angle. Still no tire prints, no footage either. The camera by the front gate had gone dark. Cut wire. That same evening, I found 3 screws stuck halfway into the sidewall of my truck's rear tire. Not randomly stepped on, driven in like they were put there with a damn screwdriver. I rerouted the entire security system, replaced the broken wire, added a second backup DVR, upgraded the camera network to full 4K motion tracking. I also installed 2 brand new units with night vision and low glow IR, one on the garage, one watching the pool. My property wasn't just monitored now. It was fortified. Then, 3 nights later, it escalated. The alarms went off at 2:07 in the morning. I was already halfway down the stairs before the chime finished. Motion on the west lawn near the tool shed. I grabbed the .45 from the biometric safe under the stairs, signaled to Jenna to stay in the bedroom, and slipped out the back door in bare feet and a flannel shirt. I didn't have to go far. One of the new cameras had auto-pan to follow a figure moving behind the garage. When I turned the corner, I saw a man, dressed in black, hood up, crouching by the propane tank near the back deck. In his hand was a red plastic gas can. He didn't see me until I hit him with the flashlight beam. "Don't move," I barked. "Drop the can, now." He flinched, dropped the can, and turned to bolt. I was about to chase when I heard tires spinning. Someone in a second vehicle waiting by the edge of the road, lights off. The runner jumped the fence and vanished into the night, chased by the roar of an engine peeling out. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I reviewed the footage. One of the cameras caught a clear shot of the guy before he pulled up his hood. Long, narrow face, blonde hair, light goatee. I'd seen him before. At the HOA meeting I once wandered into by mistake over a year ago. That was Karen's nephew. I couldn't remember his name, but I remembered that smug look. Jenna and I drove straight to the sheriff's office. Ortega was off, but another deputy took the statement and reviewed the footage. The moment he saw the gas can, he made a call to the arson unit. Within 24 hours, the sheriff's department had issued a warrant, and they caught him. The same kid, Jeremy Holden, age 24, was arrested at his apartment with gas residue on his boots, burner phones, and a notepad with my address written out along with disturbing lines like "back deck exposed" and "wait till lights out." But the real kicker was what they found on his phone. Screenshots of text messages between him and Karen. One read, "That bastard humiliated me. Make it look like vandalism. No trace back. Do you understand?" Another, "We can't let him win. I'll handle the legal side. You handle the problem." The sheriff himself called me when they got the phone unlocked. "I'm going to be blunt, Mr. Slade," he said. "This is no longer just a civil dispute. We're talking about criminal conspiracy, attempted arson, and endangerment." He also said the DA was considering adding solicitation of a felony to the charges if they could prove Karen directed the act, which, based on those texts, was looking pretty damn likely. I wasn't surprised, but I was angry. That same day, Miri filed for a protective injunction against the entire HOA board, naming Karen specifically. She also filed an emergency motion to freeze HOA funds until an independent audit could be completed, arguing that member dues were being used to fund not only a baseless lawsuit, but possibly criminal activity. The media got hold of it fast. Local news ran a segment titled "HOA President Linked to Arson Plot" and played blurred screenshots of the messages. The comment section on the HOA's website was shut down by noon. That night, someone spray-painted "Liar" on the HOA clubhouse door. It was amateur and crude, but cathartic. Jenna and I started getting messages from other homeowners in the HOA, quiet ones at first, but then more frequent. "Thank you for standing up to her. She's been pulling this crap for years." I wanted to leave the HOA, but was scared of what she'd do. I realized something then. This wasn't just about me anymore. Karen had been running a reign of terror behind the guise of policy, and nobody had ever stood up to her and made it stick. Until now. The courthouse in Gallatin County was cold as hell and smelled like stale coffee and printer toner. I sat at the long wooden table next to Miri, my lawyer, who looked calm as ever. On the other side, Karen sat with her attorney, some pinstripe-suited vulture from Helena, who looked like he billed by the breath. This was the preliminary hearing. Karen had filed for a temporary restraining order against me, citing emotional trauma, fear for her life, and community safety concerns. The irony was thick enough to shovel. I didn't even need to speak. Miri opened with a motion to dismiss, citing lack of standing and abuse of process. Then she dropped the surveillance footage like a sledgehammer. We had multiple camera angles showing Karen and her crew trespassing, one of them pushing me, and me remaining calm. Yes, with a shotgun, but on my own damn porch. Never aimed, never aggressive. The judge, an older guy named McCready with a low tolerance for drama, watched the whole thing in silence. When the video ended, he turned to Karen's lawyer and asked, deadpan, "Do you have a response that isn't hysterics or science fiction?" Motion denied. TRO rejected. Karen looked like she bit into a lemon dipped in bleach, but we weren't done. Miri filed our countersuit right then and there. Trespassing, physical assault, defamation, attempted fraud via unauthorized fine issuance. And then came the big one, conspiracy to commit a felony. We attached the sheriff's office report, full transcript of Jeremy's texts, and the forensic analysis of her phone messages. The DA hadn't filed formal charges yet, but the civil case didn't need to wait. We asked for punitive damages, permanent injunctive relief, and a cease and desist order barring Karen or any HOA representative from initiating further contact with me or my family in any form, verbal, written, digital, or physical. Karen's lawyer tried to pivot. "Your Honor, this is a neighborly dispute gone out of control. Surely the court can see." The judge cut him off. "This is not a neighborly dispute. This is textbook harassment and retaliatory escalation by someone in a position of local authority. The fact that a firearm wasn't discharged is the only reason this isn't a criminal arraignment yet." Boom. The media coverage exploded after that. I don't know who leaked it. Could have been someone from the clerk's office, maybe even a homeowner tired of Karen's reign. But within a day, local TV crews were parked across the street from the HOA's clubhouse. The headline read, "HOA President Faces Civil Action and Alleged Arson Link." Karen doubled down like the idiot she is. She held a press conference, said I was a dangerous radical with military training and a known pattern of intimidation. She even brought up an old, unrelated incident from years ago when I broke up a bar fight and someone hit me with a bottle. Claimed I had violent tendencies. Big mistake. I let Miri handle it. She called the network directly and gave them the footage of the HOA members pushing me. Then she gave them a list of previous complaints filed against Karen in 2 other counties where she'd been on other HOA boards. Turns out this wasn't her first stunt. In Missoula, she tried to evict an elderly couple for painting their shutters beige instead of approved earth tones. In Billings, she fined a homeowner $2,000 for excessive Halloween decorations, then tried to foreclose when they didn't pay. Both times she had resigned before formal review. We folded that into a supplemental brief. The judge agreed to fast-track the discovery phase. That meant depositions, subpoenas, document requests. Every HOA policy, email, and financial transaction for the last 2 years now had to be handed over. And that's when we found the map. It was buried in an annexed zoning document, included as an appendix in a county filing from the HOA's expansion proposal 6 months ago. Someone had drawn a red line, crudely, by hand, around a series of properties, including mine. It had the word prospective boundary scribbled next to it. No signature, no date, no approval. Karen had submitted that with the original land annexation paperwork, but never disclosed to the county that it had no legal authority. Worse, she'd used it to argue that I was technically within HOA consideration and attempted to justify the fine she issued me. That was fraud. The court issued an immediate injunction freezing the HOA's ability to collect or issue new fines until the matter was resolved. The financial audit revealed that over 30 homeowners had been fined under similar shady expansions, none of which were legally approved. Now we had a class action. 5 neighbors contacted Miri within 72 hours. Karen's house of cards was starting to collapse. The first sign something was off came when I found a dead squirrel stuffed into my mailbox. At first, I thought maybe it was some sick prank from local teens, but then came the slashed tires. 3 in one night, 2 vehicles, all parked within my locked gate. And the trail cam I'd mounted to monitor the driveway, yanked off its post, smashed against a rock like someone really didn't want to be seen. I didn't need a psychic to tell me Karen was escalating. Her legal case was collapsing. Her reputation in the HOA imploding. The local news was eating it up like they were addicted to it. She had no cards left but vengeance. I installed motion lights around the entire property, brought in a private security firm out of Billings, and stationed 2 rotating guards for night patrols. They weren't rent-a-cops either. These were licensed ex-law enforcement guys with clear instructions. No force unless in self-defense, cameras on at all times, and report anything that even smells like trespassing. And then, the brakes. One morning, just as I was about to drive my daughter to school, I noticed a small puddle forming under the front of my truck. At first, I thought it was condensation from the AC. Then I bent down. Brake fluid, dripping in a slow, steady line from a clean-cut hose. I called the sheriff. They sent out a forensic unit, confirmed tampering, confirmed it was cut clean and intentional, likely with bolt cutters or a sharp utility knife. If I hadn't noticed it in time, the brakes would have gone out around the second downhill turn on the main road. That could have killed us both. I didn't sleep that night. Next evening, about an hour before midnight, one of the security guards radioed me. He said someone was moving along the north fence line behind the workshop. The thermal cam had picked up a heat signature, too small for a deer, human-shaped. I threw on boots and a jacket, grabbed the shotgun, and came around the side with my flashlight cutting the darkness. The moment I rounded the barn, I heard the distinct sound of sloshing, like someone was pouring liquid onto wood. I swung the light toward the back deck and froze. There was a man kneeling with a red gas can, dousing the cedar planks of my rear patio. "Drop it," I barked. He jumped and tried to run, but the guards were already there. One tackled him into the grass while the other took the can. The guy flailed and screamed, kicking, yelling something about just doing what he was told. They zip-tied him and called the cops. Turns out he was Karen's nephew, a 22-year-old college dropout named Dylan Holt. When the sheriff's office ran his phone, they found text messages from Karen, direct instructions, complete with times, photos of my yard, and one chilling line. "This bastard wrecked everything. Make sure it looks like an accident. I don't want his family hurt. Just a warning. A warning. Gasoline, cut brakes, dead animals." Yeah, okay. The DA didn't wait this time. They arrested Dylan for attempted arson and conspiracy to commit assault. Karen was arrested the next day. Her face on the news looked like she'd swallowed her own tongue. She was hit with a raft of charges: conspiracy to commit a felony, tampering with evidence, endangering minors, criminal mischief, and obstruction. Her lawyer immediately filed for bail reduction. Denied. At her arraignment, she tried to claim it was all a setup, that her nephew acted on his own, that someone had spoofed her number. The judge laughed. They had the phone, the SIM card, and the matching GPS data. The digital forensic trail was airtight. The sheriff personally called to thank me for installing the surveillance systems. Said this could have ended a hell of a lot worse. I nodded, but I couldn't shake the image of what might have happened if I hadn't checked that brake fluid, or if my daughter had taken the truck first. This wasn't about HOA fines anymore. This was war. And Karen had just crossed the last line. The courtroom was packed, not just with lawyers and press, but neighbors, curious townsfolk, even a few off-duty deputies. You'd think it was a murder trial, the way people leaned in and whispered as the bailiff called out the names. But this wasn't just about me anymore. This had become the case that would define whether HOA overreach had limits, and whether private citizens could defend themselves without being crushed by bureaucratic ego and thin-skinned tyrants. Karen stood across the aisle, flanked by 2 defense attorneys, face pale and tight, like she'd been swallowing ice cubes for breakfast. Her orange jumpsuit was gone. She'd made bail a week earlier, but the court had put her on GPS monitor and ordered zero contact with anyone from HOA or my family. Didn't matter, the damage was done. The whole damn iceberg had surfaced. First up, testimony from the responding deputies. They confirmed the scene at the barbecue, the footage from my surveillance, and that I'd never made a direct threat, that my shotgun had remained pointed at the ground the entire time. Then came the forensics officer, walking the jury through the tampered brake lines and the recovered gas can. He laid out the forensic timeline, fluid trail, shoe prints, the security guard's thermal video, and, most damning, the metadata on Dylan Holt's phone. When the prosecution called Detective Morales, things took a new turn. She walked the jury through Karen's digital fingerprints, text messages, cloud backups, email drafts, and deleted messages recovered from her laptop. There was a whole chain of correspondence showing her discussing my property, my family, my business. She had used HOA funds, actual budgetary money, to pay Dylan under the table. The memo line on a Zelle payment read, "Extra trash removal." Yeah, real subtle. The courtroom audibly gasped. Then came the zoning map. Remember that fake document HOA used to justify the fine? My attorney brought in a licensed cartographer and GIS analyst who confirmed that the submitted map was a doctored copy with my parcel's boundaries redrawn. The date stamp was backdated, and when subpoenaed, the original county survey showed no such boundary change had ever occurred. At this point, the judge called a recess. Outside, reporters hounded me with mics and questions. Do you feel vindicated? Was the shotgun really necessary? Do you regret not joining the HOA? I just shook my head. I regret nothing, I said. But I'm done being polite to people who kick down fences and call it compliance. Back inside, my lawyer laid out the counterclaim: civil trespass, defamation, attempted extortion, emotional distress for my children, and a demand for a permanent restraining order against both Karen and any representative of Golden Trail Meadows. Karen's attorney tried to counter with some weak emotional trauma argument. Claimed she'd developed PTSD because of being confronted with a deadly weapon. The judge, a no-nonsense Marine Corps vet, replied, and I quote, "Ma'am, if I kicked down someone's door and started shouting rules that don't apply, I'd be lucky if." All I saw was a shotgun. By the end of the third day, it was clear which way the wind was blowing. Karen had lied. She had trespassed. She had falsified documents, funded criminal acts, and weaponized a community organization to go after someone who simply lived nearby but refused to obey. HOA board members began resigning on the spot. The community Facebook group exploded with infighting. Some called for HOA to be dissolved entirely. Others begged for moderation. My lawyer smiled and handed me a folder, press articles, social media posts, HOA meeting notes, all painting a picture of an organization in freefall. The judge set a date for final judgment and sentencing. I had a feeling it was going to be one hell of a reckoning. I stood outside the courthouse as the verdict was read. Guilty on all counts. The words rang through the chambers like a rifle shot across an empty field. Karen didn't flinch. I think she'd accepted her fate long before the judge's gavel dropped. But when they cuffed her in front of the cameras and walked her out, head down, there was no dignity left. Just a husk of someone who'd spent years treating rules like weapons and neighbors like serfs. The final charges stuck: criminal trespass, document forgery, conspiracy to commit vandalism, attempted coercion, abuse of HOA authority for personal retaliation, 6 years in state prison, no parole for the first 4, a lifetime ban from serving on any board or nonprofit, permanent restraining order from me, my family, my property, and the cherry on top. The judge ordered a forensic audit of the entire Golden Trail Meadows HOA. Within weeks, they found thousands of dollars in administrative expenses unaccounted for, and more disturbing, evidence of HOA targeting homeowners outside its jurisdiction through mailed threats and phony citations. It blew up statewide. A county-appointed interim manager took over HOA operations. But honestly, the place was done. Half the members pulled out within a month. Several resigned their properties to private deeds and got the HOA dissolved by majority vote. The neighborhood had gone from exclusive planned community to sprawling legal hazard overnight. As for me, the judge granted every item in my countersuit: full damages, legal fees, a one-time payout from the HOA's remaining reserve funds, And most importantly, a court order declaring my property immune to any future HOA attempts, enforceable with steep penalties. A few weeks later, I rebuilt the pergola, the same one they interrupted that day. It was sturdier now. Oak beams, fresh stain, new grill station. I held another barbecue the day it was done. Smaller crowd this time, just close friends and family. And when I unveiled the new bronze plaque I had mounted on one of the corner posts, everyone stopped to read it. It said, "Private property, not for sale, not for HOA." I started a new arm of my business, Home Perimeter Defense Consulting. Alarms, cameras, legal signage, and training for homeowners on how to protect their rights the legal way. I even got certified to offer classes on castle doctrine and stand your ground laws. The irony? A few ex-HOA folks asked me for help securing their homes. People in the county now knew the name Trevor Slade, not because I was famous, but because I'd stood my ground. And I'll tell you this, no one's come near my gate uninvited since.